Okay, welcome everyone. So the script that I'm working from today, maybe Kyla can post it in the chat really quickly so I can share my screen and show you how it works. So we're using a Pluto notebook, which means, just very quickly, if you haven't done that before, that in the Julia REPL, you need to install Pluto first of all. If you haven't done that, you need to write using Pluto to kind of load the Pluto package, and then Pluto run, and then it'll open in your browser, and it'll ask you what file you want to be working with, and you can just copy paste the link to the GitHub that that's in the chat, and then you should see this. So this should open, right? So this is the third part of our Learn Julia with Us series, and it'll be some more about strings and characters and also data containers generally, and arrays. That's what we'll talk about today. So to start with a really quick recap from last time, we talked about string concatenation, so kind of gluing several strings together. And in Julia, we need to use this asterisk to do that. So we can't use plus, that doesn't work. And here's a quick example. And also to explain, if you're not very familiar with Pluto, or maybe to remind you, we have text here, right? So this is just explanation, all this text and so on. And then this is a code block. You can see that by the slightly different color. And Pluto only wants you to have one line of code in each code block. So if you want to have several lines, you need to do begin, then write your several lines of code, and then end. And that's why that's there. And you'll see that come up a couple of times today. So that's why we have this begin and end, so that we can have several lines of code. So here we're just defining two variables, just name1 and name2. So these are just our names. And we're defining a connector, so a word that we want to put in the middle. And then we want the output to be something like, so the name, first name, and followed by the second name, are your teachers today. That's what we want to have. And you can see we've used this asterisk to concatenate the strings together, and we get this output. In Pluto, you have output on top of the code block, right? So that's why that's there, and it's just printing out this sentence, and that works fine. If we try to use plus instead, it won't work. So if we try to do this same thing, but with a plus, you can see it throws an error, and it says method error, no method matching plus with string and string. So two strings, you can't have a plus. It just doesn't work. It needs to be this asterisk. And while we're doing a recap, we can also talk about this variable assignment really quickly. So you see that it's the variable name, then an equal sign, and then the content of the variable, right? So it's always like that. That's the structure. You can't switch it around. It needs to be variable name equals, and then whatever the content is, right? And then Julia will remember that, and you can refer back to it later, as we're doing here. And variable names, you have to make sure that they don't start with a number or some other special character. Yeah, that just won't work, but otherwise they can be. So you can see we have numbers here at the end. That's fine, but it can't start with one. All right.
Could you make your text size a little bit bigger?
Oh. Yeah. Is that better?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right. So next we're going to create a variable. And what I would like to do is I would like to have this $sign emoji, and then I would like the actual $sign to be assigned to it. And just as a quick recap on how do you get these emojis, you do \:, tab, and then you can type in, you can kind of search here, you can kind of look for whatever you want to use. I thought alien was pretty good, so I've hit enter and tab again, and now I have a little alien here. So you can use emojis like that. You can also, so again, \:, and now I'm pressing tab. You can also use Greek letters here, or you can use arrows. It's kind of offering you a couple of things. And then I've pressed tab again to actually make it show up as this symbol. So that's how that works. So that's what we've done for this dollar bill. And then I'm trying to assign to it the dollar sign, right? But Julia's complaining. It says invalid interpolation syntax. And we'll talk about what that means. So interpolation, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but basically the dollar sign has a special meaning in Julia. So it's trying to do something that just doesn't make sense here. So this dollar sign, we'll talk about it later, what that does. If we want to use it literally, so if we just really want a dollar sign in some sentence, we have to use this backslash. So this is called escaping it. You might, if you're familiar with regex, regular expressions or something, you'll have heard this before. So this is escaping a symbol that otherwise has a special meaning. It means using it literally. We just want to print it like it is. And now that's working. And we can also use that in some sentence now, and it's not complaining. And there's something similar going on with the double quotation marks, and they tell Julia, so this is the start of a string, first quotation mark, double quotation mark, then you have some string, and then this is the end of a string, like it does here. So string starts here, string ends here. That's what these double quotation marks do. But what if we have double quotation marks within a string? So that's a situation where we have to escape them as well. So where we have to put that backslash. Yeah, where we have to have that backslash. Otherwise, it'll think that that's the end of the string. Right, so if you have these double quotation marks within a string, you also need to escape them. Right, and you can see that these backslashes still show up, right? And if you want to print some nicely formatted text or like write it somewhere, then you probably don't want that. Usually you can just do print or print line. So print ln is what that is in Julia. And it'll just get rid of these. It'll know what it's supposed to do. Like it'll know this is just a dollar sign. This doesn't have special meaning, just print it as a dollar sign. In Pluto, you just have to use text. So you can think of text as printing in Pluto, basically. And you can see I've created this barista variable. The barista said that'll be $6, please. And that'll be $6, please is in quotation marks. And if I wrap that in text, so if I do text barista, you can see it prints it nicely. So it knows what to do with the backslashes. It doesn't print them out. It just prints it as, yeah, nicely formatted as we would like it. And then it gets really meta because the backslash, if we want to use that literally, if we just really want to print a backslash, we also have to escape it. So if we do this text and then so print basically 2 backslashes, it'll print 1 backslash. All right, and there are 2 more useful escape sequences that you're probably familiar with, might have heard of. So backslash n is replaced by a new line if you print, and backslash t is replaced by a tab. So here's some example. So here text, again, think of it as printing. It just says this text on the first line. I wasn't very creative when I wrote this, but this text on the first line and then backslash n, so new line. And then this on the second line, and then again a new line. And then I have here a tab, backslash t, and here another tab. And you can see that they've been added to the actual output, to the actual printed text. Right, so backslash n and backslash t, these are pretty common. You might have seen them before, but they also work in Julia. Are there questions before I move on? Okay. Yeah, so let's talk about string interpolation. So this warning that we got when we tried to use the dollar sign. So you saw that when we tried to use that when we tried to assign it to a variable, Julia was complaining, didn't like it, because it has a special meaning, and it's used in string interpolation. So you can have basically a text, and you can use this dollar sign to insert variables in it. into the text. So we'll see an example. So here I'm using again a begin and end block because I'm doing three things. I'm defining my cat's name, her age, and her weight. Right, so I'm just defining these three variables. So this is two strings, and then this is obviously a number, and you'll see that it works. And now I've written a sentence. My cat is years old. Her name is and she weighs kilo. So you can think of these as having a text with blanks. And now we want to put in values for these blanks. And that's when we use the $sign. So here I want to put my cat is 11. So I want to refer to age, years old. So I can use the $sign and then age in brackets. These are optional in some cases. And then I can do the same for name. Her name is, and then I can just refer to the name variable. And then for she weighs, I can just refer to the weight variable. And if I was to change that, you can see it changed here, right? So if I change what the variable contains, then it'll change here. Okay, so this string interpolation with the $sign is a way of kind of inserting whatever value a variable has into some string, into some text. And it's nice because this keeps track, or it can work with these values changing. So about these brackets, you can often leave them out. I can just do age without the brackets. I do need the $sign, obviously, because that's the string interpolation, but I can often leave out the brackets. But if I do, so let's say I want to say next year, my cat will be a year older, so 11 plus 1, so her age plus 1. If I write it like this, it'll be printed as 11 plus 1. But if I put brackets around it, so here I have this $sign and then age, which is 11 plus 1, it'll interpret that. So it'll do that little calculations and it'll print 12. Right, so if you have numbers, you can do any operation that you want in these brackets and it'll print the output of that. You can also do string concatenation, so adding several strings together, that's also possible. So I can do, here I've defined favorite animal as cat, as you can probably guess. And my text can be, I wish I had several, and then I want to do favorite animal, so cat, and I want to just add an S to make it plural. So I can do favorite animal, the asterisk for concatenation, S, and it'll print, I wish I had several cats here. So it does that correctly. And I can do that with several variables. So if instead of typing in S, I define a variable that's called plural equals S, then same example as before, I wish I had several, I wanted to say cats. I can just say favorite animal and then asterisk plural. And again, the cool thing here is I can change. So if I change my mind and I don't know, like rabbits now, you can see I've changed it and this is updated, right? So here I wish I had several rabbits. Okay, questions on this? Okay. So then let's talk about data containers. And the definition here is a little bit vague, maybe, but I think we'll see how it works. A container is something that can contain more than one value. So you've already seen data containers in terms of strings. So strings hold several characters, or can hold several characters. They can hold several characters. So a string is a data container because it can hold several characters. So strings are one example. We'll see another example later today. Okay. So we can use indexing to get data out of a container. So here we're using strings as examples, and we want to get letters, or characters, I should say, characters out of strings. So here we're defining a string, our string. This is just the first 10 letters of the alphabet. And then to index it, so to get some characters out of that, we use square brackets. And then we basically count. So this is index 1, A is index 1, B is index 2, and so on. We count up to J being index 10. So if I write our string and then square brackets 1, it'll give me A. And this is different to languages like Python, which start counting at 0. Julia just starts counting at 1, right? So the first thing, the first character in this example is just 1, right? It's indexed by 1, not by 0. Okay, so we could also do 10, run that again. Now we have J, right? We could put any number in here from 1 to 10, and you can see it pulls out 1 character, and it gives us this whole definition or description of the character. And I'll show you a way to get rid of that if you don't want that later on. But yeah, for the moment, it pulls out 1 character from our container, from our string. And it starts at 1, which is, I think, more intuitive than 0. But okay, let's see what happens if we try to call something that can't be. So an index that just doesn't make sense, that isn't in our container. So here we have the first 10 letters. So if I do 11 or anything else, anything that's higher than 10, I get an error, and this is a bounds error, so kind of out of bounds. And it says attempt to access 10. So it's a 10 length string, it has 10 characters at index 11. So it's telling you, I think this is fairly informative, it's telling you there are 10 things in this container, 10 characters in this string, and you're telling me to index at 11, and that doesn't make sense. It goes beyond, right? So bounds error means there's something wrong with the length of your container is not what you think it is. Okay, so we can we've seen we can extract just one character as long as it's within the bounds of our container, but we can also do that with a range, and we just use a colon in the square brackets. So here we're doing 2 to 4. You can read that 2 to 4, right? So a range. So we want the second, third, and fourth character in our string, and that's B, C, D. Okay. And if we want to save that range or save some subset, save some range to another variable, we can do that. We can just define that. So another string, or we can say hi world, but only 1 to 4, right? So only save characters 1 to 4 from this string that we've only just defined, right? And then another string actually contains just hi, the space, and the W. So that's also good to know because the spaces also count as characters. So spaces are also counted. This would be 3, right? So if I do 3, it'll be a space. Right. Okay. And so far we've just typed in numbers to say start here and then end there. So which index are we using? But for the indices, we can also use variables. So we can define a variable that says 3 should be the first index and then go until 6 in our string. So here I'm defining 2 variables. I'm not sure if we've shown that before, but you can define several variables. You're just adding a comma. So here I'm defining a start variable, start index, and an end index. And I just have a comma in the middle. And here I have an equal sign, and then I'm listing the 2 values it should have. And what that does is it says, so the start index is going to be 3, and the end index is going to be 6. Right, so that's how you can define several variables at once. So you just list them with a kind of comma separated. And yeah, this is important because it might look like you have 3 and 6 in the same variable, but it's actually not the case, right? You have one variable with this value, the second variable with this value. So now back to our string. So again, just first 10 letters of the alphabet. And I want to go from 3 to 6, index 3 to 6. And I can use these variables that I've just defined instead of typing in 3 to 6. And you can see here's our output. Okay. So at the moment, when we define a range, we get every single character from, in this case, 3 to 6 or whatever we define. But if we want every second or every third or every fourth character, we can do that by adding here in the middle how many. So this is every second character. So here we have a 2. So we're going from index 1 to index 9 in steps of 2. So you can see it goes A, then it skips B and goes to C and skips D and so on. Right, so this is saying go from 1 and then skip 1 and extract the next one, right? So this is in steps of 2. We could also do in steps of 3, right? So you can see A and then B, C are skipped and then D and so on. And you just add that in the middle, right? So there's just another colon and you add that in the middle. We can also go backwards. So right now we've started at the beginning of the string, index 1, or whatever we define, and go to the right, but we can also count backwards. So here we're starting at 1. Sorry, we're starting at 9 and ending at 1. So we're just switching it, and then we have to do -2. Right, because we're going backwards. So start at 9, first index is 9, second index is 9 - 2, so it's 7, and so on. And you can see it switched the order around, right? So these two are just the same in reverse, right? So we can start on the right and move to the left if we go backwards, right? If we do minus for the steps. And it's also possible to say, instead of writing 1, we can write begin, and instead of writing 10, we can write end. So here I'm going from the last index, so end just means the highest index, the last character in this case, and I'm going from end to 1 in steps of -1, so I'm going backwards, right? So this just lists our entire string just backwards. And we can also do, so just to show that begin, we can also do that, begin in steps of 3 to end, right? So go from the first index in steps of 3 to the last index. And end is probably more useful than begin. You can imagine a situation where you don't know exactly how long your string is or where the length changes maybe, and you want to extract the last couple of characters or something like that. So end is pretty useful, but you can also do begin. You can also do 1. So begin maybe not as useful, but end is definitely something to keep in mind. Okay, and then finally for this topic, I've shown you, let's look at this first. If you extract just one character, it'll give you this definition, right? It'll give you this description of the character. But what if you just really want the character as a string? You define a range that goes from 3 to 3 in this case, right? You can also do 4 to 4 or whatever, right? So you define a range that just goes from the same place to the same place, same index to same index, and then it extracts it as as a string, right? So it's just a string compared to this long description here. Okay. Questions? All right. Good. Then we're moving on to another container. So this container is called an array. If you're familiar with lists in Python, for example, they seem fairly similar to me. So if that helps you think about them, then yeah, I think you can think of them as kind of lists. So arrays are also data containers, like strings that we've seen, but they're slightly different. So in arrays, you can change the values that are being held, and they can also hold different data types. So a string will only hold characters, it will all be characters in it, but an array can hold, let's say, characters and numbers at the same time. And if we want to make an array, we need square brackets. And we're going to use what's called a comprehension. And for that, we need a keyword, which is for, and an operator, which is in. So here's an example. We're working still with our string, so just first 10 letters of the alphabet. And we're actually saving it to an array, and the variable is going to be called alphabet equals. So this is just the assignment operator again. And we have square brackets because we want an array. And what we want to do is we want to take our string and go through every element in it. So every character, in this case, every single character. And we want to add that to our array. So the syntax that we have here is character for character in string, right? So for every element in string, add that to this array. So this is a comprehension. It's, if you're familiar with Python's list comprehension, you'll kind of notice, or you'll have seen something like that before. So this is we said that it iterates, so over a container, so it goes through every element, every character in this case, in a container, and then does something to it. And here we're just adding it to an array. And this character abbreviation that I've used, this doesn't have special meaning. I could use whatever I liked. So here I have an example where I just do ch, so k for k in our string, and it works just the same. We can actually click on this little arrow to show what the array looks like. So here we have index 1 is A, index 2 is B, and so on, right? And we can also, so here's just another example where I'm using letter for letter in our string. So this is, so character or letter or whatever, it doesn't have a special meaning. You can also use X for X in our string. So yeah, you can use whatever you like, but it is a good idea usually to use something that tells you a little bit about what's in this data container. That'll just, later when you write scripts, that'll make your scripts easier to read if you don't just call everything X and Y and Z, but if you actually give it names that make sense and that help you remember what it contained. Okay, so now we have an array. So we have type, we can call type of, and it'll say array with characters in it. And so far we haven't really changed anything about these individual letters here. We've just put it in a different kind of data container. But we could also say, okay, to the power of 2, which will just double the letter. So that would be this code here. So alphabet repetition, it's just what I'm calling it, is character to the power of 2 for character in our string. So here in this first position, we can do something to each element in our data container, right? So I could also do, and then we'd have 3 of these, right? So if you want to do some kind of a change in these elements, you'll have to do it in the first position, right? Okay. So again, the structure is just, for this comprehension, to make an array, you have square brackets, you have these kind of temporary variable names, and then for, again, you're repeating the same temporary variable name in container, whatever your container is. And these are really just temporary, right? So this character is not saved in our environment. Julia won't know what that is. This is just used to make that array. And if we want to make some change, we need to do it here, like the first time we use this temporary variables. And the reason why arrays are really good for us and also make sense for Julia is that they are really good, really fast, very efficient at storing data, storing memory. So that's why they'll come up again and again, right? And they are called, or these ones that we've created are one-dimensional because you only need one number to index. So you can index just as we've done before. If I do 2 in square brackets, then I get BB out of it. So this was this array here. If I do 2 to 4, so I can do a range and I get several. So I get 2, 3, and 4 out of it. And I can also do, so let's say 1 to 6 in steps of 2, so skipping every other element here, and that works. So indexing for strings and for one-dimensional arrays works the same. All right, so just a quick introduction to arrays. We'll get back to them at a later point, but just as an introduction, that's what I want to say about them at this point. Are there questions? Okay, so then we have an exercise. So this is actually a quick, or maybe not so quick, we'll see how it goes, script writing exercise that'll, yeah, for which you'll need some of the things that we talked about today. So this is a Mad Libs generator. That's going to be your task, to make a Mad Libs generator. So that's a, if you're not familiar, it's a word game where you have a sentence with, or text, can also be a longer text, or we'll just go with a sentence with blanks. For example, last night I dreamed I was, and then people need to add an adjective, bird, and flew to blank. People will need to add a place with someone or something, some kind of a noun, right? And what we'd like to do is write a script that says to the user, please enter an adjective, then remembers that, please enter a place, and then remembers what the user has typed, and please enter a noun, and again, remembers what the user has typed, and then copy paste these words into a sentence that you've written. So you can use this one, you can also do something else if you want. So it asks the user for input and then puts that input into the right positions in this sentence or text that you've written, and then prints out the complete sentence. And one additional thing that you'll need is the readline function. So readline is just, it records whatever the user is typing when you call it, and you can save that to a variable, and then you can reuse that variable later on. And yeah, at this point, I think I'll just stop Pluto. So I've gone back to the REPL, and you can see this is busy because it's running Pluto. You can do Control-C, and it's going to stop that. You can see that it's trying to reconnect, but it's, yeah, we've stopped it. We can still see the text, but we couldn't do any new code. We couldn't run any new code. It's wishing us a nice day, which is lovely. Okay, and now we're in the REPL, and I can quickly demonstrate this readline function. So what I want to do is I want to print something that tells the user, please type something in. Otherwise, the user won't really know what to do. So I can do print line. What's your favorite color? Okay. So print, what's your favorite color? You're about to ask me to increase the font size, right? I don't know if I can. I haven't found a way to do it. So yeah, I'm just trying to kind of narrate what I'm doing. I can post it in the chat as well. So I've typed in print line, print ln in Julia, and then just in brackets and in quotation marks, what's your favorite color? And now I'm adding a semicolon, because I want to add, I don't want Julia to execute this yet. I want it to wait for what else is going to happen here before it executes, right? So semicolon, and then I'm going to create a variable. The variable is going to be called favorite color equals, and then I can just call readline. So it's just readline with empty brackets. So what's going to happen is Julia is going to print, what's your favorite color? And then it's going to wait for you, the user, to type in something, to type in what your favorite color is. And we've saved, so whatever you've typed in, we've saved to a variable. And now we can call that variable again. So we can print another statement. So we can do print line again, and we can maybe write something like, okay, your favorite color is, and then we can print whatever was saved in that favorite color variable. Okay, let's see if that works, or let's see if I've made a mistake. So Julia is now asking, what's your favorite color? So I'm going to type in blue, and I'm going to hit enter, and it prints your favorite color is blue. Right, so again, we've done print line, what's your favorite color? Then the semicolon to say, don't execute it yet, wait for the next, wait for the next commands. Then we've said fav col equals read line, just read line, empty brackets. So this will record that I've typed in blue, and then it's going to print that. And I'm going to run it again. So here Julia is saying, what's your favorite color? And you can see it's waiting for input from us. So if I don't do anything, then it's not going to continue, right? It wants me to type something in. And then it's going to print that because we've saved whatever I've typed into a variable. All right. Okay, so yeah, we're going to leave you to try your hand at this like Mad Libs generator, and we'd recommend that you write the script, or that you use a script, right? You can work in the REPL as well, but might be easier if you want to use a script. So you can go, for example, in VS Code. That's what I'm going to demonstrate in a second. So I've just clicked on new file. I can select a language, and then it'll save that in the correct format. Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly save that. Okay, so here's my script. So I want to write that in here, and then I'm going to call the script from the REPL, and I'll show you what that looks like and how that works in a second. So you can either use a script, just try to write down what you think the script should look like and what it should do, or you can also use the REPL. And I'm going to pause the recording and give you a couple of minutes to try that. Okay, so with that, I'm going to show you how I would do it. Let us know in the chat, yeah, how you did, what you maybe struggled with, what worked, what didn't work so well. But just to show you how I would do it, so I'm just going to take this example sentence. You can of course do something else. You can do a longer example or something totally different. And I'm going to work in VS Code, Visual Studio Code. I've already made the script. So I've already created that. It's called madlibs.jl, and this .jl ending being associated with Julia. So that's important because later we'll need to know what language it is. And VS Code is also going to help me or try to help me a little bit write Julia code. And here I'm just going to add a comment. Yeah, Madlibs generator, just as kind of a headline. And I know kind of what my sentence is going to be, and I'm just going to call that sentence. That's going to be my sentence variable. So if I know I want to print it, so I might as well do print sentence. Okay, I know that I want to print that sentence, but I also know I don't want to print it like that with these kind of blanks and adjective and so on, but I want to take user input and add that to the sentence. So I need to ask for user input. So I need to print something first. So again, print, and here I'm using print line, so print ln. That will add a new line. It'll add a line break after whatever it's printed out. I just feel like it makes it formatted a bit more nicely, but that's the only difference between print and print line. Okay, so first thing I need is an adjective. So I can say enter an, oops, adjective. No, that's correct. And maybe I want to add a little explanation what an adjective is. Okay, so I know that people need to enter an adjective. I know that they need to enter a place. And finally, they need to enter a noun. So enter a noun. And again, I'm just adding a little explanation of what a noun actually is. Okay, so right now that will run, but it'll just print these 4 statements. So that's not really what we want. We want to record whatever we want. Yeah, we want to be able for the user to type something in. So we want some interaction, not just print statements, but we want the user to be able to type. So we know that we need read line in each of these cases. And for us to be able to use what the person typed in, we need to assign it to a variable. And here I'm just going to abbreviate that first element to adjective, right? So this is going to be printed. Just in our example with the favorite color, this is going to be printed. You can type something in, and whatever you type in is going to be saved to adjective. Then we can do the same here. So place is read line. So it'll print, enter an adjective, you'll type something in, and then once you're done with that, it'll say enter a place, you'll type something in. Once you're done with that, it'll say enter a noun, and we also need to record that. So assigning it to noun. Read line, so whatever you print in there is going to be saved as noun, as the variable noun. Okay, so that's good. We're recording input, we're saving it, but we actually want to use it in the sentence. So that's where string interpolation is going to come in really handy. So instead of printing adjective, I want to print whatever is saved in the adjective variable. So I can write $add for adjective. And then I can do the same thing with place. So I can just type $place because that's what I call the variable. And then finally, $noun. Okay, so now this should work. So again, what we've done is we've given some kind of instruction to the user who should type something in. We're saving that. We're doing that 3 times. So we're doing the same thing kind of 3 times here for 3 different variables. And then we're putting that into a sentence and we're printing that sentence. Okay. Yeah, so I want to test that out, obviously. One unfortunate thing is, so usually in VS Code, you can click here on this play button and it'll execute the script. You can do that here, but the problem is that read line and VS Code don't work together. It just kind of gets stuck there. So what we're going to do instead is run that script from the Julia REPL, and it's also kind of good to know how to do that. So we have our script. This is done. You could have done that in the REPL directly. So just do it kind of line by line. That would have been fine. Okay, fine as well. So we have the script. It's called madlibs.jl. It lives in this folder here. So now I need the path. So I need to tell Julia how to find the script. And this will obviously depend on where you've saved it on your computer. So in order to run the script, I'm in the Julia REPL. I'm typing include. So include is the command to say, here's a script, please run it. I'm going to copy paste the path, just, yeah. And I always need to right click. So I've done Control-C, Control-V to copy it in, and then I've right clicked. And here's an annoying thing that Windows does, is it changes all the, well, we need forward slashes, we need these slashes, but it actually copy pastes it with backward slashes. So we now need to go through and replace them all, which is great. So now we have the path to this folder that I'm in right now, but we still need to tell Julia what the actual script file is called. And it's called madlibs.jl. So we need the full name. We don't just need madlibs, we need madlibs.jl. And then I should remember to, yeah, close the quotation mark, close the bracket. Okay, and you can see it's running. It's immediately telling me this first instruction. So now I can say, oops. So I've just entered, so it's telling me to enter an adjective. I've entered colorful as an adjective. Enter a place. I would love to go to Scotland anytime soon with a friend. So now it's giving me this output last night I dreamed I was a colorful bird and flew to Scotland with a friend. Cool. So again, to run the script, because we haven't talked about that yet, the command is just include, and then you open brackets, and you need the you need to link to the script basically. You need the path to your script in quotation marks with forward slashes. If you're on Windows, that's always an issue, and it needs to include the script name .jl, so including the ending, and then it should run. So this is just running what we've written here. It's just running it in the REPL. All right. Are there questions on this? Okay. Yeah, in this case, I'll stop the recording, and thank you very much for joining us today.